So welcome back students in this series of onClick technology. So in the previous video of this series we have discussed about React components, their properties and the state. Now in this video we'll discuss about React.js events. Now what is an event? So an event is an action that could be triggered as a result of the user action or system generated events. For example, a mouse click, pressing a key interaction or called events. So let's say we have a button on the screen and when we press that particular button, the functionality that happens is known as an event and we have to handle that particular functionality, that particular button click. So for that we'll do event handling over here. Now let me show you practically how events work, how to set up some kind of events and how to handle that events into the React.js. Events in core.js and React.js are quite semantically different. So I'll show you what is the difference between the syntax of the React.js events and JavaScript events. So let me open my VS Code and then we'll start the coding part. First of all, let me design a component which I name event test. Basically to test the events we are designing. Now in this event test button we have a return statement, and in this return statement let's say I have a button. So I have a button and the name of this button, the text inside this button will be click me to test the event, you can say. Now if I render this button, now if I render this component inside my main component, so I'll write down event test, that's all. Now let me check the output of this. So this is the button we are getting. The text over here is click me to test the event. So when I click on this button, nothing will happen. Why? Because the button click is an event, but we are not handling that event right now. So we'll handle that event in two ways. So we can use an arrow function or we can use an external function. First of all, let's just do the simpler part, which is the arrow function. So for that, I want to handle a single click on that button. So whenever a mouse hover onto that button and clicks once, that particular event I have to handle. So for that I'll write down onClick. So onClick method we have used in previous video also and in the JavaScript videos also. So onClick event will be the most common event we'll use throughout this program. Now in JavaScript we'll do onClick event like this. So we'll have to pass the function name. Let's say the name of the function is this. So we have to pass event like this. But in JavaScript, because we are using JSX, we have to pass the event into the curly braces. So I am passing a right now function. So I'll write down arrow function which will just show me an alert event, let's say handled successfully. Now let's try to click that button and open. Now on the single click of that button I am getting an alert. So here you can see we are getting an alert on the single click of that button. So this is the basic of an event handling part. Also I can do the same task outside of the function. So if I write another function, so let's write another button, but before that, because we are rendering multiple items, we have to pass a div for that. Now let's me add a different button and I'll write down the text will be, this is my second button to test event. Now in the onClick method of this event we'll write down onClick. Now here I'll call an external function. For that I'll create a function first of all. So I'll write down just alt is the name of my function. So I'll write down function alt. As this alt is just a function but not a component, so we just have to define it like a normal function and we don't have to uppercase the first alphabet of this character. So we'll write down alert, this is my external function. Also let's print something on the console. So I'll write down console.log hello world. So now let's test this. Now this is my first button which I have implemented with this onClick method with the internal arrow function. This is my second button on which I have implemented a external function. So when I click on that, so I'll getting the external function. This is my external function we are getting. Also let me check the console. So on console also we are getting this hello world. So if I click this multiple times, you can see we are getting hello world over here. So this is how external components or not external. So this is how external functions can also be used inside the button event. Now in React we have multiple kinds of events. For example, this is the basic onClick event. On this, on the other hand, also I can use on double click. So on double click, let me show you on double click. So this is how double click will work. Now if I click on this, it will not work. Why? Because the event on this button is not on click, it is double click. So when I double click on this button, you can see a alert over here. So this button is working on simple on click, and this button will only work if I double click on that. So that's a on double click event. Also, let me show you another example of an event. So if I click, if I say, so you can see you have a lot of events over here from which you can choose. So let me say on mouse over. So mouse over is very interesting. So if I click on this, now this button is working with double click, and this button will work with mouse over. So I don't have to click something, I just have to take the mouse over this button. So as soon as I take my mouse on this, it will automatically show me the alert. I don't have to click this, just the mouse over will work. Also there is a mouse out. So if I put mouse out event, so you can see if I just took mouse inside that button, nothing will happen. But when I took mouse out of that button, it will show me a alert. Let me show you again. Mouse inside, nothing will happen, but mouse outside will give me a alert. So this is how the events work. So events is basically what? Basic kind of functionality on a particular event onto the screen. Whether it can be a screen loading, whether it can be a button click, whether it can be a text field. We can put events on nearly everything into the JSX part. So this is how the events will work. Also, we can pass some variables or we can pass some properties using the event. So let's say in this function, now if you want to pass a variable or a data to the function, so you have to write an arrow function for that. So I'll write down arrow function. Let's say arrow function, and then now if you want to pass some kind of data to that particular function, so you cannot do that directly, because in mouse out or in React events you cannot pass the property directly. So you have to call a separate function which will do that task for you. So for that, let me write an arrow function which will call my alt function with the argument. So I'll write down arrow, and inside this I'll put my alt. Now I can pass variable. So let me pass my name, Kuldeep. So now what we have to do, we have to accept a variable from here, and I'll say hello plus name. So output will be hello Kuldeep onto the console. So let me check this, whether my property is passing or not. So if I took mouse inside, nothing will happen. But if I took mouse outside, so you can see hello Kuldeep. So that means the property is successfully passed to the functions, we can say. So this is how you can pass properties or arguments to the function inside the arrow function of JavaScript React events. So this is how React events will work. Now in the next video we'll discuss more about these events and put these events onto the text inputs to create some interactive forms into the React. So that's all for this video. So thank you for watching this video.